Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Todd Clint's SharePoint Podcast number 351, recorded live Monday, August 28th, 2017. I am your host, Todd Clint, and sitting next to me over there is the other guy. Tell the crowd who you are.
Hi, my name is Shane Young with Bold Zebras, and I'm here to keep Todd from being annoying.
You have failed miserably. I don't know how many of these podcasts we've done together. You have not succeeded even once in that endeavor, I don't think.
Well, it's good to have goals, right? You want to be focused. You want to have a future in mind. And the future is one day I will keep Todd from annoying me, which will mean annoying the listeners on the show.
But see, that's one of those things. Whenever you do goals, you have to do the SMART goals. I forget what all of them are, but, measurable. And the A in SMART is attainable. That's what the A stands for. So this is not a SMART goal.
See, I like stretch goals. I like to, I don't want to go and land people on Mars. I want to land people on Neptune so they can get the diamonds that are flowing inside the planet, right? That is
a mission that will pay for itself. You get one ship there and back. It's full of diamonds. You're golden. You're set. I'm guessing the Iron Bank will sponsor me, or De Beers. Well, they're kind of the same, so one of those two will. I would think De Beers would not want you to do that. I would think that De Beers would not like more diamonds on the scene.
Well, I think if they sponsor, I assume they plan to purchase all of them and kind of go that route.
Yep. So for production, get hold of us. I'm Todd at toddclint.com. He's Shane at boldzebras.com. Email us, tweet us, Instagram us, Snapchat us, Tinder us. We're everywhere. Everywhere you want to get a hold of us, we're there.
Oh man, I need to update my Tinder profile. A little picture like this.
Yeah. If it wouldn't be one of those things that would come back as here's a reason you should have thought there was something wrong with your marriage, Mrs. Clint, I would create some kind of crazy Tinder profile just because I like to make fun of it. But again, that's crossing a line.
Yeah, Greg and I used to have a fake name and persona and everything, right? It was Doug Disney. That was our name for online endeavors like that. And Doug was a baller, so I've never admitted this on purpose. I don't know why this edited out. I don't know if I want Doug being exposed like this, but he's been exposed.
Yeah, I had a pseudonym too. Did you ever watch the movie Midnight Run with Charles Grodin and oh my God, I can't remember Robert De Niro?
Mm-mm.
Great movie from the 80s, just hysterical. But one of the FBI agents is Alonzo Mosley. And for whatever reason, that name amused me. But then I messed it up and started using the name Alfonso Mosley, thinking I was using a name from Midnight Run. So I've got, that was a high school and college thing, but yeah, good time.
Well, good job, Alfonso.
Yep, Alfonso Mosley. So for production notes, I'm all caught up with production. Last week I was behind because I was on vacation, but I'm all caught up. In no small part due to the fact that I rewrote a bunch of the PowerShell scripts that I used to produce this, kind of inspired by all the PowerShell work that you've been doing. And we were doing these code reviews and kind of bouncing ideas off of each other. I'm like, man, these scripts that I'm using are like 5 years old, and they were horrible and poorly written the day that I wrote them, and they have not aged well in the 5 years since then. So I rewrote them, and that's sped things up a bunch. And so it does a lot of crazy stuff, and I don't know if I'll ever share them. Number one, because they're probably horrible PowerShell today. But number two, they're so specialized to what I do. But if anybody cares, I could probably show it. But it takes, the video that we create with this, copies it over, renames it, brings in a skeleton XML file for the RSS feed, populates all the values. After I render that stuff out, it goes through, tags the MP3 files, uploads it to my server, renames it. It just does a bunch of those little automated parts. I have a couple little things left that I can probably do, but it's pretty close to as automated as I can make it.
Pretty fancy. Yeah, I have to admit, I looked at the code and it all made sense. It wasn't, you weren't using any hieroglyphs or, anything like that in there. So I think it's good. I think it's solid.
Yeah. So off on a tangent, I was on another website and somebody was asking how to do something in PowerShell. So I was kind of reading through and somebody gave them, the answer to what their question was, but not the answer to what their real problem was. And so the answer was incomplete, but it was all just full of freaking aliases. Like, I don't think they spelled a single commandlet out. So then the original poster came back and said, I needed to do, this other thing. Essentially they had a get child item and they needed to add recurse to it. Because instead they just wanted it from one directory, they wanted all of them. So I took the original guy's thing and expanded all the aliases out and then added the recurse thing. And so then somebody else is like, well, this looks like the same thing that other guy posted. I'm like, it is, but it's written in such a way that the guy that asked the question can actually understand it, can actually learn from it, and have, a snowball's chance in hell of actually being able to use this later on. So.
Yeah. Yeah, on all my videos, right, I always harp on people about that, right? If you get a script, it's got a bunch of that stuff, just start translating it, because it's so much more readable, I don't even think I know what a percent sign is off the top of my head, but for each object, right, I understand what that means, even if I don't know what it means, so.
Yep, yeah, so I'm good about that. And then I've, we'll get to this stuff later. So that helped. Now next week, so I was gone last week. I'm going to be gone next week. This time, next week, I'm going to be on a plane heading to Sweden, which for me is that way. And so Shane is busy next Monday at this time, but he has graciously agreed to do the podcast next Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern. 2 p.m. Eastern, so 1 p.m. Central, 2 p.m. Eastern, and then I'll produce it, all that. And last Monday was a bad idea anyway because it was Labor Day, so we're gonna go ahead and get one out, and then I'll put it together either from Sweden, because the other thing that I did with these scripts, so when I made those scripts 5 years ago, I made sure that every single file location was hard-coded. If wherever possible, I hard-coded every path. In the new version of the scripts that I rewrote a couple of weeks ago, everything's relative paths, so I should be able to do all that stuff in Sweden. And I'll have the conference I'm at will be on a boat, but I'm going to be in a couple hotels, on the bookending it, so I'll have some decent internet.
Can you do it in Swedish?
The translation apps these days are great, so I have no reason why I probably can't.
Well, this is the part you're supposed to say. PowerShell is all in English, so then yes, you'd be doing it in the Swedish PowerShell, even though it's English.
Oh yeah. So I'll be able to do it. That'll be the plan. So we'll see. And I'm using OneDrive. Well, I'm using Dropbox, but I wrote it so that it would work in OneDrive as well. So. All right.
Then let's go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm curious how that little hiccup's going to show up on the final recording.
Me too. Hopefully it cleared itself out. It's just the internet's just needed to hiccup and do its thing.
Yep. All right. So on to this week's topic. So you've got topic number 1, which kind of leads us into some other ones. So let's have it.
Yeah. So I just saw a note reminding people that the Windows Management Framework 5.0 is out of support. And so it was interesting kind of reading it, because they never really said, hey, we're going to drop support for Windows 5.0. What they said was, hey, when we release 5.1, 4 months later, we'll stop supporting 5.0. But they didn't really, I don't know, it was kind of a twisted way for them to drop support for the Windows Management Framework. So that's why I wanted to just make sure everyone knew that if you are using that, to get support and such, you've got to be on Windows Management Framework 5.1 now. The good news is I've heard no problems with 5.1. It seems to install and go pretty well. It gets you better PowerShell. Life is grander, but just one of those things I feel like they snuck in the night on us. I wanted to point that out to everybody.
Yeah, they were pretty quiet about it. And for those of you that haven't done the dance yet, the Windows Management Framework, or WMF, is how PowerShell is distributed. So we don't care about anything in WMF that isn't PowerShell, but to get the newer, tastier PowerShell bits, WMF is the way to do it.
Yep. And so speaking of that, I have a video on installing the Management Framework 5.1. And, Windows 10 type of people, not really a huge deal because there's not a huge delta. But if you're on Windows 7 or Windows 8, putting the Management Framework 5.1 on really ups your PowerShell game. You get a lot more DSC stuff and just a lot more of the, the fancifulness that is the latest versions of PowerShell. So I'd recommend checking that out.
Yeah, and DSC, I was reading some stuff this weekend from non-SharePoint folks, MVPs and Microsoft professionals and all that, but not SharePoint folks. And they don't have a very high opinion of DSC. And the kind of the prevailing opinion was that it's just too much work for what it does. Like, there are other ways to get enough automation without, tens of hours of work. And so I don't know that DSC's ever really caught on.
Well, I can definitely see that, right? Because in reality, if you're going to put that much effort into doing something like DSC, you probably should have put all your effort into just automating the build entirely. So if a PC, or not PC, if a server goes out of compliance or something bad, you burn it down, you spin a new one up, right? That's the more of the cloudy approach these days. So yeah, I can see where DSC kind of showed up a little too late, and there's more useful ways to apply your DevOps skills than DSC.
Yeah, and for those of you that haven't gotten familiar with it, DSC is a piece of PowerShell, a functionality inside of PowerShell, and it stands for Desired State Configuration. So essentially, you set up a DSC server, and you set up these DSC packages, and then if you want a particular desired state on a server, you down this DSC package. But there's a pretty good amount of overhead to it, and it's not simple stuff. And I think that's why people haven't taken to it as well as Microsoft had hoped that they would.
Yeah. Last week I got to spend some time with one of the local startups. It's another one of the SaaS platforms, and they were going through how they had built everything in AWS. And I was pretty surprised at how, I guess they didn't really believe in these people, but they've done a really good job of kind of automating the whole provisioning process. So every time they have a new release, instead of trying to patch or upgrade their infrastructure, you got the 2 servers, you take one down, you spin up a new one, you use the DevOpsy stuff to blow the config in, download the stuff out of Git, deploy the packages. I mean, everything completely scripted. That server comes online, you tear down the other one, and then you rebuild it with the same plan. And there's nothing manual. They'd really done a really good job of just automating the whole process. So they did just press a button when they want to roll out version 7 versus version 8 type of thing. So
yeah, and that's the way it is now. It's to the point where we shouldn't be surprised by that, because that's just the way business should run. Certainly anything that's brand new, that's just how it should be designed.
Yeah. Now the real kicker though is they're like, all right, so how do we take and just do this in Azure? And I'm like, well, yeah. That type of portability is not here, right? You can do all these same things in Azure, but it's completely different across the board. So I think that's where they're kind of hitting the rock in the hard place right now.
Yeah. Speaking of Azure, your friend of mine, Jerry in the chat room, Jerry Lacanu, reminded us that they're shutting off SMB version 1 in Azure IaaS machines. So that was one that has recently been used as an exploit for bad guys to do even worse things. And so Microsoft is just going to kill it.
Yeah, they sent me an email this morning about that too. I guess I should have caught the note. Good job, Jerry.
So speaking of PowerShell, one of the things that I've been doing the last week is my car. I've got a 2013 Explorer. I can put a USB drive in it, play MP3 files, and it pulls up album art and all that kind of stuff. So a bunch of the MP3s I've got on there are ones that I ripped 10 years ago, 15 years ago, legitimately, and didn't have all the album art and all that kind of stuff on them. And having recently walked through, refactoring all the podcast MP3 stuff, one of the things I do is I add album art. So I had all that stuff in my head, and I'm like, I could absolutely just write a piece of PowerShell that walks through every MP3 on this drive, looks to see if it has an album art, and if it doesn't have album art, add the album art. So I wrote that this weekend, and there's still some tweaking because I'm trying to do things by standard, trying to make it look good. But I absolutely have that working. So I ran through, I took, a subsection because it's like a 32 gig drive or something. Took 5 gig and just said, go to town and tell me all of the MP3s that don't have album art. And then, I tried to put some logic in where it should get art, where it, for files it doesn't find. So I may end up releasing that at some point because that's kind of a handy thing to have.
And so where do you get the album art? You just call in?
So these days, there's a couple of ways to do it. When I ripped it back 15 years ago, there was no good place to get that. And I think I just went out to Amazon or CD Now and just saved them, did it that way. Mm-hmm. These days, if you play it with Windows Media Player, it will go out and download all that stuff and it will drop down album art files. And so I think that's probably, we'll see. I need to figure that out a little bit to see how to get that. I mean, I have all the CDs. I guess I could scan them if I had to.
That sounds terrible.
So that, and then the other thing that I'll probably do after I get the album art thing figured out is when I buy all my MP3s at Amazon now, and they have album art, which is good. But when Amazon downloads them, it makes a folder for the artist and then a folder inside of that for the album. And the way that I've got all my stuff is it's all flat and it's in a folder that's artist-album and then the year. So I'm going to write something to go through and jiggle it because I know how to read all the MP3 tags, so I can just write that.
So fancy.
Yeah. But that's one of those things. It's all, and this is trying to work some SharePoint content into this. That's one of those constant things is that folders are metadata, and it's kind of a combination of both. But once you get the good metadata into the files, get the artist, get the album, get the year, all that kind of stuff, then you can make whatever kind of folders you need to. You can use logic, you can make workflows and stuff around it. And so all of these MP3s that I ripped, have all that stuff, and so it makes fixing those things a little easier.
Well, that's why we're always trying with PowerShell to reinforce with people string manipulation, right? I mean, any of these automated solutions, right? You're trimming starts, trimming ends. You're doing a lot of manipulation to get the little pieces out you need to build these character or folder names and things like that. And I don't know, I just feel like that's one of those overlooked skills that a lot of people just like, well, do I need to know how to format a string? Because everything's a string when it comes down to it.
Yeah, yep. And that's funny. So when I was rewriting my podcast stuff, the way that I did it 5 years ago and the way that it currently works now is it pulls the podcast name from the directory it's in. So when we get done with the podcast, we'll decide on a name, I'll go into the notes. And then when I create the podcast files, I give it that for the title. Saves it in a directory with that name, and then whenever I need to figure out the title for the podcast, I pull it out of the directory name. And as I was working through that, I'm like, well, that's kind of short-sighted, because now I have the RSS files, which are XML, that are going to get put in the aggregator stuff. All of that stuff's in there, so why am I pulling it out of the folder name? Why don't I just pull it out of the XML file that's got to be here? Same kind of stuff, metadata, all that. So been a good, and so after I started this album art thing, I think Scott Hogue, and Twitter's like, hey, use this program, it'll do it all. I'm like, yeah, it'll do it, and it'll probably do a better job, but I'm kind of enjoying like the exercise. I'm kind of enjoying fitting the pieces together. I'm learning stuff. So that's...
Well, I mean, how many years have we been saying that, right? Don't try and learn PowerShell. Go solve a problem like this and learn a whole bunch of skills in this process. And it's been one of the big things. I've had a lot of requests lately for like people who want PowerShell mentoring, and every time I lead them off with like, quit trying to read the manual. Go, what do you do for your job? What is it that you do every morning at 9:30 p.m. or a.m.? Automate that.
Yep. What's one task you hate doing, and let's find out a way to do that in PowerShell.
Yeah. Now, I am sad. I really thought this was going to be a segue so I could sneak in something about my car and not having to worry about all this, but it never got there, so I guess I'll let it go.
I'm afraid you're breaking up, Shane. I think we're having audio problems again. I'm going to have to let you go.
I bet if we jump to the next topic, I bet my audio will be just fine.
Funny that. So talking about PowerShell and all that, I was setting a new machine up today, and kind of a thing for some customer-facing stuff that I'm doing. And it's Windows 10. It's got Edge. I'm going to put Chrome on it because I'm actually going to browse the web. And I'm like, I really hate the fact that I have to use Edge once to download Chrome. And I'm like, I don't need to. I can just do it with PowerShell. So sure enough, I go out, get the internet location of the Chrome installer, and then invoke web request, the URL out file, chromeinstall.exe, pulls it down, and I installed Chrome that way. So I've not fired up Edge once on that box.
I know that you're an Edge hater, but it's not that bad. I think it's okay for you using it to get to Chrome. And though you did, I guess you want to share. We don't have it in the notes here, but the thing you sent me the other day about the working as designed, because they just decided to skip a whole web standard.
Yeah, I don't remember what that was. I don't have the link here, but it was like SVG, vector graphics or something. I forget what it was.
Yeah.
And somebody's like, hey, if you go to this, the W3 working group, and they define how these things are supposed to be rendered, if you go to that page with Edge, it's broken. And like crickets, and like a couple weeks later, the guy from Microsoft that owns that thing's working as designed. I'm like, this is one of the many reasons that people hate Edge.
Yeah, no, the only thing that I worry about in that scenario, right? So he absolutely did. I agree. They're like, hey, that thing that the whole internet uses, we don't support it. But part of me wonders, do they know about some security exploit that those type of graphics introduce, and they just decided not to support it, but they don't want to say that, hey, those are exploitable? Do they have a good reason for it, and they just can't say, which is sad because no one's going to give them credit. But
maybe more than likely, if I remember correctly, that particular web standard is one that's not really used these days much, and it was like, we don't want to put the effort into it. We just don't care. Yeah. I think that's they're waiting for it to die, but it's. I guess so. I guess I don't question the technical decision so much as the bedside manner. If that guy would have popped in and said, it's an old thing, we've decided it's not worth the time, or we've got some technical hurdles. I mean, some explanation that's like, yeah, we looked at this and we could do it. We're really sorry. If this inconveniences, we feel terrible. Nope. Working as designed.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been too much effort to say, yeah, 6 whole people on the internet use this feature. Move on.
Yeah, that one cracked me up. But anyway, if you want that PowerShell, I'll put it somewhere. I'll blog it. Hell, I don't know. But
Yeah. Invoke web request. That's really all you got to know. And then tab complete from there.
well, you know the URL, and then I had to use the basic parsing, and I don't know if that's because I hadn't set Edge up on this because I hadn't walked through that thing the first time or not. But use basic parsing, give it an out file, and Bob's your uncle.
Yeah, it'd be interesting though, because the Chrome installers change. Can you find a link that'll automatically always be good? Right, that link's probably already bad.
Well, so I thought that same thing because it's got a version number in it or something. Yep. It's got a number in it. I don't know if that's an actual version number. The post that I got that from was a couple of months, couple of years old, but that's just the installer. That's not the actual Chrome itself. So I watched it, and it does go out and it does download something. So I'm guessing that's just enough of a nub to go out to Google and say, send me the newest version.
You're so smart. Good job.
And good looking. I can't.
If the video was working right now, I'd be petting your head. But since I'm not, I'm just kind of virtually petting your head. Good job.
And I can't get headphones to work to save my life. But all right, D is for you. Let's hear about D.
So this is still, we've talked about this probably about a year ago, right? But this was just another nice article on wearing the same thing every day and all of the benefits of it. I cannot do justice for how much I want to put this into play, right? This idea, Mark Zuckerberg's famous for it. Jobs was famous for it back in the day. And the idea, the whole thought process behind it is if trying to remove trivial decisions from your life, waking up in the morning and spending 10 minutes or an hour like my wife on what are you going to wear today, it's just not productive use of your brain power.
Yeah, so, and I've not read this article. I don't know if I have or not. But many people think you've got a finite amount of energy that you can put towards making decisions. I mean, much like, discipline and all that stuff is a muscle where you have to practice it to strengthen it. Also like a muscle, it gets tired. It needs a break. So I don't know. Clearly, by the way I dress, I don't spend a lot of time picking out what I wear, but I can see how if that's just one less thing you have to worry about. My parents were in town today, and it was like lunchtime, and we're trying to figure out where to go, and nobody wanted to make the decision. Like nobody wanted to mess with it. Nobody wanted I'm like, I get it. I can see it.
Yeah, because I wear the same things over and over and over again, but I still have 2 or 3 things I kind of have to sort through, and if I could get away with it, if I ever end up divorced, the first sign will be is you never see me in a different shirt again, right? I'll wear the same
Mountain Dew shirt.
No, it'll be let's see, it would probably be a red Under Armour, just one of these synthetic material shirts. I would just wear it every single day. I'd wear some black shorts with my black good sweatpants. Call it a day. Yep. So there you go. That'd be the sign.
Yep, that's how we'll know. That and the celebration that will come from Nick, I assume, will be the other way that we'll know.
Well, yeah, I mean, she'll probably throw a party. You'll probably all be invited, so good job for you guys.
So we've got some happy news. Tell us about your battle with the big bad Google.
Yeah,
the little guy won.
Well, the little guy kind of won. Right? So remember, if you guys listened to last week's show, one of the things I asked was that everybody go out and click on my PowerShell for Profiles video. Don't watch it. Just spend 2 seconds, give me a view, because YouTube had flagged it as inappropriate content, because PowerShell is inappropriate apparently. And they were not letting me monetize it and use it the ways I normally do. So I needed 1,000 views in 7 days in order for them to view it. Review it.
Just to do the appeal, right?
Yeah, just for them to care.
Start the appeal, yeah.
And so luckily, with a lot of help, Mr. Clint was very kind with his resources, and a lot of people just clicked on it 1 or 2 times, got me to a high enough number that Google, YouTube, those people did finally go and review the video.
Yeah, and that was interesting for Shane and I, because every morning we would go out and we would see how many views this video had, and then we would employ various measures, good or bad, to try to get that number up. Again, not because we're trying to make him, we just wanted him to be able to, get his appeal. And we noticed as the week drew on, things stopped working. Like ways that we could get view hits on Monday didn't necessarily work on Thursday. And I'm not the savviest interneter out there, but I was putting a fair amount of effort and thought into this. And so it was just educational for Shane and I to see what worked and what didn't.
Yeah, and our whole goal, right, just so everybody's kind of on the same page. Because somebody said, "Oh, I'm doing all this work so you can make money." I've made like 13 cents off that video. So it's not wasn't a get rich quick scheme. But what we were hoping for was that the appeal process would allow us to engage with YouTube and, kind of understand what was going on, what in the algorithm did I flag, what can I do differently, just trying to kind of get them to iterate through the process with us. Nope. Todd and I were sitting there on last Thursday conniving, trying to find new ways to cheat the system. And all of a sudden the video status just changed. They didn't send me an email. They didn't send me a note. They just changed it to green and said, okay, you can have it now. It was really kind of frustrating. And
I doubt they would have told us much more. If you'd have gotten 1,000, I think they probably would just come back and said, yep, we reviewed it. You're good. And that takes me off to another tangent. You and I have talked a bunch about Facebook's algorithms, about the people you might know thing. Mm-hmm. And I read an article last week about some woman who kept getting this, someone you should know, someone you might know thing for a woman she'd never heard of before. And turns out the woman who was getting the thing, her father was adopted, and this woman was her father's biological aunt. And somehow Facebook, and they had no other, they lived in different states, they lived in different cities. And so this woman who, is her biological aunt through it, and so she gets a hold of Facebook and she's like, how did you figure this out? And Facebook's like, yeah, I'm not going to tell you.
Yeah.
We're not going to say. So there's a story on Gizmodo. If I can find it, I'll link it up. But I think that's the thing. I think YouTube's not going to tell you the algorithm they use to flag your stuff, and Facebook's not either.
Yeah. Well, I remember we had a similar thing with Target a few years ago where they were sending, prenatal vitamin coupons to, teenage girls, and they'd figured out that the girl was with child before the family had, and it was create some awkward scenes because they'd gotten so good at seeing buying habits and changing behaviors. This girl is with child, and it's like, whoa, that's really creepy but really impressive at the same time.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So when Gizmodo reached out to Facebook about this thing, Facebook basically said, well, we have a bunch of different signs, because it's a big graph in the background. We have a bunch of different signs that we use, and we're not going to tell you what they are or how we rate them or anything, because clearly then someone would exploit them. And but it was really interesting, and it reminded me of the story. I've told this on the podcast before. Several years ago, I was in Australia, and I flew from Sydney to Auckland in New Zealand. I needed a ride from the airport to a customer site. And one of my coworkers in the Sydney office there said, oh, yeah, I got this driver. He's a great guy. So I set it up with the guy, gave him my phone number so he could call me. He met me at the airport. He drove me to the site. And that was it. And several years later, he shows up on Facebook as someone as I might know. And I'd never emailed the guy. I'd never called the guy. I had not made any contacts to him anywhere other than I got in his car. I paid him with my credit card, and that was it. And I think you and I don't remember how we cracked the case, but when we were researching this, it turns out that he had likely given the Facebook app on his phone access to his contacts. It had found my phone number there. It recognized my phone number from its databases, and that's how it got us together.
Yeah, I mean, big data is just amazing. I mean, it's just all there is to it.
Yeah. So
yeah, those of you that don't believe us that you should be going into DevOps and AD, PowerShell, that type of stuff, the other place you could go is go do some big data, because there's a lot of demand, a lot of jobs over there as well. So.
Yeah, and just fun, crazy stuff. And I was talking to a friend of mine. He's a statistics guy. I was talking to him on Friday, and we were talking about this kind of stuff. And I'm like, on one hand, I love the crazy things they can figure out with this. There's so much good that can be done with this. But unfortunately, the bad that can be done with it will probably keep us from ever being able to realize all the good. And that makes me sad.
I don't know, or the bad will just happen, right? We'll end up with something like Minority Report, where we just end up having to kill people off because we know that statistically they're due to commit a murder, so we're going to kill them before they can kill someone else.
Yeah, I should go back and watch that. That was yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I ever watched the whole thing, but clearly I heard enough of the explanations of how terrible it was that I get the premise, and it's no good.
Yep.
All right, we'll probably should be cleaning up here. Where are we at?
Yeah, so roughly at we'll cut some out. So I want to talk about Jay. Do you have a fun one you want to do? Maybe H or I or something?
We'll do I real quick. So speaking of big data, Oh my goodness. So my
Excellent segue, by the way. Very well done.
thank you very much. So my crazy children, right? They really wanted to play Plants vs Zombie Garden Warfare 2. They've been watching, Dan TDM or Stampy Cat or one of those YouTube celebrities play the game. Like, oh man, we really want it. So we put the old chore monster to work. Said, you get enough chore monster points, you get the game. So they achieved that. So I sat down one morning when they were at school to put it on the system. I'm like, all right, I'll download this, kind of have it all ready when I get home from school. That game was 29.84 gigabytes to download off the web. I was like, OMG. It's like the developers aren't even trying anymore. 30 gigs to download a simple first-person shooter that's a bunch of plants and zombies running around blew my mind.
And that is insane. That is just... I don't have words for that. And I was moving some stuff around. I was installing some machines and came up close to my cable modem's data limits. The word's escaping me. But with people streaming video and then downloading 30 gig games, if you've got a quota on your cable modem, 30 gigs a fairly decent sized chunk of data. It took probably an hour to download too, right? They weren't in a hurry to give it to me. It wasn't like MSDN where it just flew down. Yeah.
But then I was talking to Jonathan Mast, right, one of our developer friends. He says that FIFA 17 or whatever game number version they're on is a full 40 gigs. So apparently I was whining about nothing. Apparently 30 gigs I should have been happy with. But it just blows my mind. You think about those 8-bit cartridges made games we enjoyed. Now it takes, terabyte of content to make a video game. I don't know. Yeah,
and the worst part about it, it's clearly inefficient, but the thing that I hate about it, and I don't play games much, but when you fire it up and then it's got to pull that upload, pull that update down, you're like, oh, for God's sakes. And I want to go play the game. I can't go play the game. That's when that whole 30 gig, is ridiculous because now you got to wait an hour or whatever.
All right, and then so jumping over to speaking of waiting in line, right? I'm just crushing the segues today. What is it you want to tell us about with Jay? What you got coming there?
Yeah, so this was a story. I don't remember if we covered it first, but a while back, the NYPD announced that they were moving all of their phones to Windows Phone. And I can't remember when that was, but that was this big technology thing, a big win for Microsoft and all that. And I saw today the headline that they are scrapping 36,000 Windows phones that they've only used for 2 years and moving all to iPhones because there's just nothing there for Windows Phone. And this was interesting to me. So the article says the move follows Microsoft's recent decision to stop supporting the operating system that runs the NYPD's devices. Now, I didn't think Microsoft had stopped supporting Windows Phone, so maybe the specific version of Windows Phone that was on these Nokia phones, and so maybe buying new Windows phones. But I was, so the big complaint that everybody had about Windows Phone is there's no apps.
Yep.
That was it. That was the number one complaint. For police officers, I don't know that they need like the latest version of Tinder. I assume that they've got homegrown apps and all that. So I can't imagine the app gap was a problem. So I think, they just didn't want to update 3,600 or 36,000 phones and they couldn't come up with a deal for Microsoft to support them. But it's a bad headline. It makes Microsoft look bad.
Yeah, this is absolutely a money play versus, any feature functionality, right? The people making these decisions didn't use the phones. They didn't care what the best platform was. They said, Apple, how much will you give us? Microsoft, how much will you give us? Google, how much will you give us? And Apple won the competition. That was 100% of what it was, right? There was probably no feature parity discussions, no nothing. It was just straight up, how do we get the big check?
Yeah, and I always, being cynical and behind that, every time I see the surfaces on the NFL and all that, I'm like, this is all just marketing. It's all just, yeah.
It absolutely is, right? Because I worked with one of the NFL teams, and they were using iPads to do their videos, 3 or 4 years before the Surface stuff showed up. I love my Surface. I'm all for it, but yeah, it's absolutely just Microsoft wrote the bigger check that week.
Yep. All right, well, let's move to self-promotion. I've already mentioned this. Next week, I'm going to be in Stockholm and Tallinn, Estonia. for the SharePoint Exchange forum, so you can find out all about that. If you haven't signed up yet, go to www.seforum.se, and I'm going to be talking. I got 3 sessions. I'm going to be talking about Azure AD. I'm going to be talking about PowerShell. I'm going to be talking about OneDrive. Going to be some good stuff all the way around. This conference is on a cruise ship. I'm very excited about that. So I'm flying out Monday morning and coming back on Sunday, I think. I forget how all that works. But Laura Rogers is going to be there, so I get to hang out with her. Haven't seen her in forever. So looking forward to that. The week after that, or a week and a half after that, Shane and I are doing a PowerShell class, boldzebras.com/PowerShell training.
Yep.
PowerShell training. You can find out about that. We're doing 2 sessions, session 1, session 2. Shane's doing the first one. I'm doing the second one. Sign up for that. $99. And if you want them both, we'll figure something out. We'll work with you. The week after that is Microsoft Ignite. So go to ignite.microsoft.com. Sign up for that. I'm doing a session with Jason Himmelstein on Thursday afternoon. And then doing the podcast, my part, I'll be doing that in Orlando. Shane has been not allowed to come into Orlando. Something happened to Disney. He won't talk. It's all very hush-hush. But we're hoping to bring him in, and we'll be doing the podcast live that Monday from there. And then finally in November, I will be in Slovenia for the Thrive Conference and doing similar sessions, Azure AD stuff, Office 365 stuff. So if you're in Eastern Europe, that's a good one to go to. And I'd love to see you there.
You travel a lot.
I do. Again, like last weekend, I'm gonna get hitting Europe 4 times this year, so that's good. So
crazy. All right. Well, yeah. Remember, everybody. I'll see you next week at 2 p.m. Eastern if you'd like to join the live show and heckle as I make a mockery of how to publish a podcast on the internet.
And how easy it is to do all the audio when there's just one of you. Yes.
Yes.
All right. Well, thanks for sticking around, folks. Chat room will be around for a little bit. And then I will see you guys in a couple weeks. Go easy on Shane next week. He does the best with what he's got.
Thanks, guys.
See you in 2 weeks.